everybody, welcome to the Quantum Coalescence Podcast. My name is Laina, and we also have Missy and Jen with us today. Today, we are going to be talking about something that might be a little bit prickly in some ways. We're going to be talking about gods and deities and the notion of energies personified and how we are also energy personified. So we felt that along with that, part of the conversation is to talk about personality, you know, where personality comes from and all of the things that factor into it. We are definitely going to be chewing on those things today, and the idea of accepting the fact that you are the power. So as usual, we will be deconstructing and offering some different takes on some of these topics. And we really want to, you know, allow you as the listener to put things back together for yourself and to think about, you know, how these big, broad topics and concepts relate to you and how they sit with you. So without further ado, let's jump into that.
I think that when we first initially got on this topic, I think that it was, I don't know how, the way I was spirit trained was you are the power, you are the power. No one can make these decisions but you. What feels good in your body? Like it was pounded into me relentlessly. So at some point, I began to question, so why am I calling in other beings and entities if I am the power? So at what point, if at any point, do you begin to maybe stop using the words calling in? Maybe it's about that. Maybe it's about accessing. You know, you're instead of calling in a deity or a god, you're accessing your God fractal. And that was a conversation that I just wanted to begin because people inherently do not see their worth. We see that out in, I mean, right now it's a huge theme. It's very trendy right now to know your worth and let your jiggle out and whatever your freak flag is, let it fly. That's happening and it's awesome for visibility. But then on the energetic side of thing, I think it also transfers.
Yeah. Yes. I love the part of where you said the fractal of ourselves and accessing. So while wherever within a conversation on the back end happened, I came across a TikTok that this gal, she's very much more occult based and she's well read. I don't quite vibe with her 100%, but she got me thinking because she was contradicting the today's notion of the chakras and what they truly might be or where they originated from, right? So she had mentioned, which I unfortunately did not have the time to really dive deep and fact check this, but she had mentioned in her studies in an ancient, how far back, the chakras were originally gateways and portals specifically for the gods. And that got me thinking, you know, on how language and verbiage and the way that we take the chakras these days and what's popular now, is that any different than what she is saying? Or is that just part of it? Is that just language? Or then it got me thinking into the gods. Okay, so what she's saying is true, but what if what we're thinking of as the gods is different? So I thought, what if the gods that we have thinking of, we're thinking like Isis, Odin, Artemis, all of these different beings, what if they are just energy personified? We put the personality to that energetic entity, soul, being, or what if it even is a soul. Like, I'm trying to like grasp my thoughts here. Think of sound. You know, you have the 437 hertz and it's a certain frequency, right? What if the gods are similar? It's a certain frequency, it is a certain energy that we as humans, to be able to digest and to access, we have added the personality to it. And that's where this has started to rabbit hole in my brain.
What do you think, Laina?
So many things. Yeah, for me, that really shifts my perspective of looking at it, because I do think that, kind of talking about this prior to starting our conversation today, that as humans living on a physical planet, inhabiting a physical space, we have had to frame things, frame concepts and origins in a certain way in order for us to understand. And I think that it could entirely be possible that from the beginning, we have had to frame things as beings, energies that are similar to us in order to understand, in order to start the path to ascension, growth, taking care of the planet, however you want to look at it. But then there's also very much a part of me that's like, but there are also ascended masters. Yes. There are also people who have come before us. And to me, I firmly believe in the idea of a functional multiverse, that there are beings and people out there that have been at this stuff for a much longer time. So it gets very complicated and like all twisted around in my head very quickly when I try to think of it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. So
it gets very convoluted, and I think that no matter what you can talk about, it's great. This is great brain candy is what I call it. Great brain candy to think about and trying to understand the construct. But it does truly come down to bottom line. We are oneness, and we are everything, and we are all that is just this little tiny piece of it, and living our own little play, our own little, we're delving out our preferences, choosing what we like and what we don't like. I know that from our work, the sort of primordial gods were a long time ago, but we are, again, based on what Spirit has taught us, we all fractal back to that one piece, which then fractals back into the split of the source energy dividing into divine feminine, divine masculine, that original split into light and dark, shadow and light. And we have played with that, and there's different names for all of that, but it's all the same thing. So from that stance, I'm like, well, heck yeah, it makes sense that we all go back, right? But what does that mean for us living here and accessing it while we are, holy crap, sorry, am I allowed just to share? Just as things come to me, I was going to ask you guys this during the intro. Some divine being, and it wasn't mine, stepped in on the left, and I was like, do I need to move over? Because you're kind of infringing on my personal space here, buddy. So what if throw me a god. Okay, Odin seems to be the topic of many. What if he's fractaling off and we're just, because you come with a DNA blueprint and you have these proclivities to choose what resonates with you and what doesn't based on your choices, right? But what if he's just sitting somewhere fractaled off into all these pieces that of anyone who pings his vibrational frequency? Because Lord knows they're huge beings. Huge. Sorry, I got a visual with that, and I wish I could draw.
I like the idea. I kind of keep coming back to what does it do for me now, right? So I keep coming back to what does it do for me now?
Always.
And it's simply understanding myself enough to be able to keep pushing my bounds and to keep growing. You mentioned the duality there, Missy, the light and the dark. And I keep coming back to, as far as numerology goes, the duality. We have the zero and the one, the nothingness and the something. And what is vibration but numbers? And numbers are just made up of a combination of zeros and ones. We are made up of zeros and ones, essentially. So that's where we're coming back to that duality. But I'm playing with as almost like we have a spectrum of sexuality, we have a spectrum of gender, we have a spectrum of we have so many different spectrums, right? And it always seems like it wants to contradict. It's like it's either like I subscribe to the duality or I subscribe to the spectrum, right? It's for me, it's both. So within the spectrum, we have those zeros and ones in a certain pattern, in a certain formula, in a whatever. And so I am a certain formula of things. Well, as I change and fine tune my formula and who I am, I tap into maybe the vibration or the energy formula of Odin, or the energy formula of Isis and that energy. And it's all rooted in who I am, and it's an archetype energetically that I have access to that I need in the moment.
Right.
And so like the gods and goddesses and the deities and stuff are, to me, feel like a spectrum of vibrations. You know, not like the hierarchy, not like, you know, whatever things come before whatever, but it's just a mass of different zeros and ones that make their unique pattern that I can then alchemize within myself to be able to access that for the whatever moment I need that for, whatever healing I need, whatever expansion, whatever, you know, courage I might need to be able to bring to a certain situation or whatever. So to me, that's how I would, breaking it down, use it in my everyday, is how do I access that vibration? That makes sense. You know,
It
like
does.
I'm, you know, and so the duality, it doesn't contradict the zeros, the spectrum, it supports it. And I think I'm applying that to like the deities and gods and goddesses. And I think I'll bring this up more as I go through this in more episodes. It's probably something for me, but like it's they're a spectrum of vibration. And we, to be able to access it in our humanness, need a personality, need a figure of some sort to, I mean, right.
I mean, that's just kind of a nice segue into that.
Right. Well, right.
The storytelling and the ego, and what is personality? How do you define personality? Because I think it's like everything else in this universe, I think it's complex. And I think that from my perspective, personality is, emotions are a catalyst. They're a huge part of it. I think emotions, humans are the only ones with this level of emotionality. Maybe they have emotions to a different extent, but right now, as choosing emotions as a catalyst for an entire planet, that's what humans do. We chose emotions to catalyze, because if you think about it, if you're excited, that's the catalyst or something you should go for. If you're grieving, you don't get to talk to spirit because grief blocks you off. You know, there's all these things where you can say, this is what emotion does for me. Emotion purges trauma. I just think that emotions play a huge piece in what personality is human. But as a soul, I don't think it, obviously we lose that. And programming all day long is part of, because we subscribe to someone's system that becomes our personality, but that isn't our true personality. But I think that's also why we come here. I think we come to play the game, to feel the things and to touch the things.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about how much emotions could in personality, because to me, I definitely look at it as kind of like a gumbo. Like I firmly believe that personality is multifaceted, and that it's inspired by our family, our genetic makeup, you know, our parents and our upbringing, in part culture. And then also I think that past lives, or if you want to get into the multiple world discussion, you can throw that in there too, is a factor. Because I know, like, speaking for me, there are elements of my personality here now that don't make sense for the experiences that I've had in this lifetime. To toss it back to something that you mentioned earlier, Missy, when you said, you know, why am I calling in other beings and entities when I am the power? Based on my experiences since starting to do this kind of work, I have come to realize that I am here now to work through power stuff, like really solar plexus, chakra things in this lifetime. And that was the goal for this, which is interesting because what is happening in society mirrors that. It's very much a solar plexus energy that we're sitting in planet. Yeah, and that has put some parameters around my personality too.
Well, Akash plays into it too. His experiences in whatever, like you said, whatever realm. Because if you throw it back then again to coding, right? If you're going to subscribe to the belief that your code, your zeros and ones, you're a projection of source, and the zeros and ones are what causes you to produce physical density and to manifest into something touchable, tangible. Those other codes are just layers to your complexity. We're multidimensional and definitely layered. It's why healing is so hard. You know, it's why people get caught up in the healing piece or shadow work, people get caught up in that because you can play in those program numbers and those emotions, whatever label them, you can play in there all the time for years, but not really getting down to the bottom level.
Yeah, root work. You have to chase that down to the root.
Yep. I like what you said there, like with the Akash and you have the DNA and you have entanglements, and it just keeps, I think, our code and our frequency at the root of who we are is forever shifting based off of my other 9D self coming down and filtering down into, this one, and what it's experiencing, and then what I experienced in the past life. And, it all, even people who subscribe to astrology and to the Myers-Briggs and to all this thing, it's human design and gene keys and all of these different numerology. It's just different ways and different lenses to try to see our code, to see who we are. And for us, because we are emotionally based in this realm, it helps us by seeing these personalities, seeing these archetypes, because that's just what this, I think, the dimension requires almost for us to then. So if I can see that as Isis is my Mother Earth figure, so to see that and have that archetype energy and apply that to what that means for me is easier for me to move through that energy versus just seeing the zeros and ones.
It's experience. It's like older people have more wisdom because they've had the experience, but they also have a reverence for all person. It's that excitement.
Hold up, guys. I'm sorry. We're kind of getting a little glitchy internet. Proceed. I'm so sorry. Life's without glitches.
I'm just, yes, it's pulling it back to the polarity of young and old, and how you when you're young, you wish to be old. When you're old, you wish to be young. And it's just this constant, this back and forth. And I think we get so caught up in, I need to fix, but you lose your life fixing things when all it is this constantly in the big and in the little. Like ebb and flow. You got to ebb and flow. Trying to bring this back around to calling in gods and deities, but wouldn't that be, so the catalyst for that would be your programming, right? If I'm raised in a family that believes in Norse mythology, then you're going to grow up that's your access. And then, if you're Christian, you grow up that Jesus is the way, and you have all of these different options and different things to choose from. But what happens when you see the benefit in all of them? We can call them all in, right? I think that was maybe hurdle one.
Right.
Was how many years have the light workers been dealing with, they're here for all of us. It's not compartmentalized.
Yeah.
I talk a lot.
I have so many thoughts on that topic of calling in whoever you need. Jen, while you were talking, and Missy, while you were talking, I kind of thought of it as a different way to frame it. Let's take crystals, for example. Everybody loves crystals. We all like to subscribe meanings behind them. Rose quartz is for self-love, and clear quartz is for amplifying, and all that fabulous stuff. To me, it goes back to the frequency. You are attracted to a stone because of its frequency and what it's operating on and what it can help you with. So it's the same thing to, gods and goddesses and deities. Like if you want to focus on your own divination strategies, then call in the deity or the goddess that does divination. I'm really tied to the Norse right now, so to me that would be Odin. And then if you want assistance navigating chaos and random stuff, call in Loki to help with that. That being said, these archetypes, these beings, these deities are super powerful. So if you're not prepared for some of the stuff that they're probably going to shove your way, you're probably going to be like, what is happening? Right. So yeah, I think definitely it's along the lines of focusing on improving yourself. It's not that you are without anything or that you're missing anything. It's It's that these energy, these beings, archetypes, whatever word you want to use, can assist you in moving that energy and becoming your empowered self.
I
We'll
think
just go with
that
it.
my head just spun off when you said
You're welcome.
when you said the part about being prepared for their power and prepared for what they bring. And I thought in my head, this is the conversation in my head. Well, I'm only going to be able to access the amount of them that I can subconsciously take on. But if there is a disconnect between who you are cognitively and who you are subconsciously, you will get your shit rocked.
Yes. Absolutely.
That is your immediate awakening when you call in something that you didn't know you had the capacity to hold, and then you're like, I got a message, Jen and Laina. I didn't know I could do this. And there is a lot of, I have watched girls, because it's always been the ladies that we've worked with so far, shed their programmings, but about this exact topic, about not knowing they were capable and worthy to call in this being that they deemed unreachable. And I'm like, you accept that you are a fractal of God, right? Everything is accessible to you then. And then they just sob. And those tears are tears of programming. Like, it's losing that program. It's amazing. I dig it.
I was thinking as Laina was talking as well, my head goes. So I am definitely leaning into that these gods and deities are, for me, more of an energy that I can access. And that energy is part of myself that I'm calling forth. Kind of like when I were to read tarot and I get a court card, I get a King of Wands. That's not necessary for me. It's always been, that's not someone external coming into my life. That is a part of my personality that needs to be brought forth. So that's kind of where I come from and what fits me right now. So when I'm thinking of a god and goddess and I have access to this energy that's within, that's just a part of my archetype that just needs to be shoved out, into the world. And when you mentioned that if you're not prepared for it, you get all of this energy, right? You get your shit rocked. How empowering is that when you link those two together? Like, this is an energy I have access to and is of me. This energy is of me. And I get rocked like that with that force. How empowering would that be? Like, I have that. That was me, ultimately. If I want to get back to source, I want to go back to the oneness, that was me who brought that upon myself. What? Like, I have that capability. Yeah.
Which is what, that's exactly what I was talking about how crying when you have that moment of humbleness, like, how can this be when I am so steeped in the fact that I'm just a little human here living my human life? And then to ask another being, they'll be like, but you're just another human here. It's like walking into a store and saying, I don't have any reason to wear that, or I don't have any reason to wear that. Like, it's how are you going to come at this? And to me, when I see someone have that realization that you're describing, it is, I relive it every time. It's phenomenal. So, good or bad? I know how you're all going to respond to that, but I'm just poking the bear.
I think it's okay to view it in however you need to view it, because I have a feeling that the way that, like, Laina invokes the gods and goddesses working with it is obviously going to be different than mine, and we're going to have a different lens, because my vibration and what works for me is going to be different than works for Laina and for Missy, for anybody else. Coming back to, like, just take what works for you. If it works for you to view them as this whole personality with all of this myth and mystery behind them, and then this big ancient omniscient, big beautiful being who comes through your front door and physically helps you in that way, then amazing. Or if it's more along kind of my route where it's a frequency thing, then great, work with that, but at its root, having that authentic want and yearn for betterment is really where it's going to be most impactful.
Intention is everything.
It really is. And knowing that, you know, it's kind of like you said, it's the way you go. Like if I'm grasping like, oh, you know, Odin, since he's been on my brain a lot, you know, I need help with this and that, and you're waiting for them to give it to you as if it's an external source. It's way less empowering than you go, okay, I'm working with you towards this goal.
So I have a question. Do you think that it's the level of the work that we are doing? Because I had just jotted down a question. Do you think that they just come, or do we somehow summon them accidentally? Like when you don't expect Odin to walk through the door, which I did not. I wasn't asking for Odin, but I know that's what I got. Do you think that the level of what we're doing, if my intentions are, I need to do this work and this is the energy, do you think that that pings then Odin, oh, this is my specialty, I'm going to funnel down into her, she's tapping into my, or do you have to name the deity that you want to work with in order to work with them?
I think Laina and I are both like, yes, no, no. Well, like
Jen and I are on the same page.
It's that frequency
Well, I
thing.
want to clear that.
Yeah.
I want to clear it up because I think that people think, for one thing, they think I'm not worthy to work with them. And for another thing, I think they think it has to be some ritual, call in the deity special dance you have to do, when that's not the case. I don't mean to connect with half of the beings I connect with.
Right.
Just come because that's, I don't know. I've never asked. I just say thank you.
Well, coming back
in my experience.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, so in my experience, when I started to explore this stuff, the way that it was taught to me is just to invite beings, angels, guides, ancestors, whoever, who are, you know, in line with your highest and greatest good. Keep it at the highest vibration so that it helps you with your progress. And so to me, it started off being, I was completely blindsided. Like to me, the first deity that showed up was Ganesh. And I'm not super familiar with the Hindu pantheon. I was exposed to it when I was younger because I had a friend, my best friend in elementary school was Indian. She moved from New Delhi, but she never really talked about it. So it threw me off that he appeared to me first. And then looking back at it now, as the remover of obstacles, right? Embodying that archetype of helping you get out of your own way and focusing on your power within, it makes sense to me that he showed up for me then. So to me, I was putting the intention out there that whoever can assist me with what I need to focus on right now, please come into the room. You're invited to the party, right? So I firmly believe that it's both. You may be interested in working with a certain deity on something, and then you can purposely call out to them. But ultimately, if you're not ready for that, they probably won't show. Or if they do show up, it's not going to be what you expected or fizzle out. But yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Odin, because that's the way that he showed up for me. He showed up randomly, and I was like, what are you doing here? And then the relationship blossomed from there. So, Jen, I know you're like frothing at the bit.
No, that's okay.
No, I didn't even get Odin. I got the crow, so it wasn't even. But I knew that it was Odin's crow. Okay, Jen.
Well, I really like the way that Laina mirrored the whole crystal thing. You know, they hold a vibration, and you know, when you are, whether you're consciously aware of what you're working on or not, you're constantly putting out what you are needing, what you're healing, where are you going, and your highest self or your subconscious or whatever it is putting that like a lighthouse ping. This is what I need. This is what I'm working on. And so whatever is needed for that, whether it's a crystal, whether it's a god or deity, it's a vibration that links you up. Some people might need the ritual to access that vibration. They might need to get themselves into, I'm thinking of, you know, different people, like in shamanism, when you invoke the bear and you are dancing in bear suit and you're doing the thing to consciously get in line with that that frequency and that vibration. I think we're moving as a collective to where we don't need to do that as often anymore. To just access, because we're so integrated. We've almost moved beyond that stage of needing that because we're not as dense to be able to access.
They
that.
needed that dense, physical, cathartic, in this instance, though, dancing, that movement to bring that frequency. I completely agree. Where I actually was kind of, I felt ashamed coming in on the tail end of things and being like, I don't do anything. Because I felt like I was not doing it right, or I was coming off as egoic, or because I'm super humble, but I don't do things the way other people do them. And then I was shaming myself for not doing it the way they were doing it. And that was all part of finding my footing. I don't know. I just think that my original point was they needed in that time, that is what was needed. And in this time, I think we are able to, if we want to, if we choose to do it a different way with less bells and whistles, maybe less physical density.
So I
would agree with that. And
go ahead. Sorry, I was just we're finding our footing here still. So
right. No, I would agree with that, because in the experience that I've had in the last few months, there are people that are, language is so funky sometimes. People are invoking these deities, these archetypes, in ways that they didn't expect or that they didn't set out to do. So for example, when that energy of Loki first showed up for me, I was intimidated and I was scared, because the only framing that I had was the Marvel Loki, who is not the same as that energy that is out there. And so I was really afraid that he was going to show up and just totally throw my life into chaos, and that things would go downhill, and that it would not be really beneficial for me at all. And so I kind of ignored him for a while. And then I reached out to a former coworker that I'm still friends with on Facebook, because they had said, I work with 3 main deities, Loki being one of them, Odin being another, and I don't know the third. So I reached out and I said, can you tell me what you work with him on? Because he is showing up for me, and I don't want to piss him off. B, I'm kind of intimidated and a little scared. And C, I have a feeling he's well-intentioned, but I can't quite figure it out. And they said, you are literally the 3rd person in the last 6 months to ask me about working with Loki. Now, interestingly enough, this happened while COVID and 2020, all of that chaos is going on. And here we have an expert at navigating chaos showing up for multiple people. So it's very apparent to me, like you mentioned, that people are accessing this stuff faster, and that they're becoming more aware of it more quickly. So the time for density is not here anymore. So I have seen that firsthand.
And you don't realize, I'm not sure that people understand how quick an activation can take place. All it takes is for you to expose me to something that I wasn't to. It's bringing cognitive mind on board. It's just like when you're doing healing work and you have to ask for permission from free will. That's all just getting your cognitive brain on board, which is guiding this vessel. And guides are like, yes, do it all the things, get it. But music, and it used to happen to me all the time that someone would say a sentence and all of a sudden I just got flushed with information, because it was just keywords put together in a certain way. Dreams can be super activating. Somebody may have an activation now because you talked about Loki, and they may, show up in their in their realm of. I want very much for people to understand how subtle and powerful energy actually is. My brain, I always felt that I needed the ritual, or I felt like I was doing something wrong because I wasn't doing these rituals, but it doesn't. You can look at these subtle things and be popped open, cracked open, DNA snapped, ready to go, and it's okay. I want you to know there's activations all around you. That's why when you said the thing about Ganesh and the that you grew up with this girl. I was like, well, look at that. I mean, like, that was perfectly, I bet you that girl's in your soul circle. I bet you that was the agreement was, I'm going to carry these, and then you and I are going to be friends, and then we're going to, and it's all going to be good.
Yeah. And to piggyback off what you said, Missy, is that energy can be subtle. You know, I have noticed that you don't have to like go out into the woods on a vision quest for 20 days in order to experience something powerful and valid. And to quote Dumbledore, however that goes, is that, you know, just because it's happening in your head doesn't mean that it's not happening, right? I had an experience that was really profound just driving on the highway. I wasn't the one driving, I was in the passenger seat, but my consciousness was like clear over here, focusing on this powerful concept and releasing some really heavy stuff while doing something completely ordinary. So I do think that there's a place for ceremony, and there is a place for ritual with purpose to get yourself into that head space or that heart space or that earth space in order to do the stuff. But you can have something prophetically profound in just your everyday life.
That is my life. That is my life.
So I have a question, kind of piggybacking off of that.
Are you going to poke the bear?
Yeah, a little bit. With that, we do hold these deities, gods, goddesses with high reverence, right? Which is well intended. You want to be well intended when working with these energies, these vibrations, however it is a package for you, right? So first question that popped up was, can you piss them off? Like in actuality, can you even really? Or can you actually have something that's more of a day-to-day buddy type relationship with this energy versus it always being like, should it be something that we do on a more of a like, hey, yo, yeah, I'm just, you know, brushing my teeth and Loki's right here and, you know, whatever, you know, like, you don't get what I'm saying, kind of like, does it have to be, if you're thinking of it as a personality, would they rather be in your life on the mundane days and mundane tasks, or is it something that should only be in ceremony? Or is it something that, you know, if I do this wrong, or if I say this wrong, or if I approach them with this, am I really going to piss them off? Or is that really a thing?
I have gotten in the habit of thinking things in a different way. And this stemmed from some of our conversations months ago, that I look at them as being incredibly busy, whether it's the archangels, spirit guides, deities. I have started to be a little bit more respectful instead of less demanding. Not that I was super demanding before, but I kind of look at it as, okay, there is so much activity going on this planet, and then who knows what elsewhere in other galaxies that they're involved in. So I have started to look at it as leaving voicemails for them. I'd be like, I will, like, okay guys, today here's my focus, or this is what I'm struggling with. I know that you'll put breadcrumbs in front of me that I can follow to figure it out on my own, or you may show up with an attunement later. So whenever you get this, whenever you hear this, whether it's right now or 5 days from now, just let me know. And I have also started to kind of look at it as more of like pinging the telephone line, where I will say, or just have it in my head, like, okay, Archangel Raphael, I don't really need your attention right now, because again, you're doing a lot, but I just want you to know, open that wire just to keep the line of communication open. So I think it could be a little buddy-buddy, especially if we really need that type of a relationship. As far as pissing them off, I have heard people say that you can. Fortunately, I have not had that experience yet. I don't know about you guys.
I think you'd be to matching frequencies. Did we lose Jen?
Yeah, I think I lost you there. Dang.
I think it comes down to matching frequencies. Like if you have a frequency that primordial, like they obviously are layered individuals as well. Are you tapping into this pissable, laughable version of Loki? Or are you tapping into divine peace? Yeah, sorry, I make words up.
I love it.
You know, which level of them are you tapping into? I think you get what you are reflected back at you.
Yeah,
on a subconscious, not a cognitive level. I don't, I piss them off unless you're messing around,
Mm-hmm.
disrespectful, I would squash you like a bug if I could. If I'm a big primordial being, which I am, and you're being mean to me, I'm just gonna zap you.
I'm sure they're also aware that they're like, oh, this person on Earth, they're just learning, give them a little bit of a break. I'm sure they probably look at it that way too, of like, okay, well, you didn't quite do that the way I would have expected, but whatever.
Well, and if you look at it as the lower vibrational, or this version of this person is going to get this piece of me, which is down here, as you expand, you're going to automatically download or access that level of information. So you won't be asking as much and won't be asking as often. You're asking to reach the next level, of them. So I really don't believe you can make them mad, because I think that they understand and comprehend their job as a primordial being. I think it would be a challenge.
I'm still navigating
I've seen
some of this, because I'm in there going, God, do I even see these as primordial beings? Do I even see the concept of God and goddesses and deities in the traditional way anymore? And so and I ask this only because I'm kind of wrestling internally. If I were to approach Isis in a way, or that vibration in a way that is misaligned, or fear-based or whatever, that's obviously what I'm going to get back. And on the outside, it looks like this being just smited me. Right. But really it's just the energy play. And if I'm in true alignment with that certain energy, then there's no way that I can get, I guess I'm still just navigating some of that, because we're kind of shifting in the way. I hope we don't not confusing the viewers or listeners of how we're talking about this, because we're saying they're beings and there's this, and then they're just vibrations. And so I think that's kind of the point of today's episode anyway, is just to navigate, what is this? I don't think we're going to have an answer. It's going to be an open-ended thing, and however you choose to deal with them. But I think I'm kind of, I feel disconnected from this in a way that I don't see, or I don't connect with them as the way that I used to, and the way that you guys are almost talking of them as that personality, as that all-encompassing being. I'm seeing it as a vibrational access to a certain part of myself that I'm now going to be working with internally. That makes sense.
It makes complete sense. But for right now, the verbiage that I think people are using, and again, that's what we're trying to change or expand on, is to refer to them as a being, as an outside being. It's not like we're not fully integrating them as ourselves.
I think that's going to take a long time too to do.
Yeah.
Agree.
I think ultimately, in some ways, not to be like this person, but in some ways it doesn't really matter. Because if you are, with everything, intention is what matters. Your focus is what matters. And even if you are not looking at Ganesh as being another being from another place, you're seeing it as more of an archetypal energy or force. As long as you are focused on your own progress, and I think the other element of that is how you can help the collective, then you're going to be doing what you're supposed to be doing anyway, right? So I think ultimately, for me personally, I look at it as both. It can be however you see it, however you need to frame it. As long as you're focused on your own progress and progress of the collective, I think that's what matters. Because ultimately, so I do angelic chakra integration, which is essentially Reiki with 7 archangels. Plus I invite some of the other ascended masters in there. Ultimately, you end up with the energy work being run, and then you also receive messages during those sessions. And it is not about hearing from Jesus. It's about what Jesus says. That is the message that you are supposed to leave the session with and focus on. Okay, how does this make sense to me? And how can I, how can I move energy so that I'm progressing as I, came here to do?
Yes.
Yep. But as humans, we'll be like, I talked to Jesus last night, and this is what he said, girl.
Yep, exactly.
Lucifer was on fire. Did you see that outfit she had on?
I'm kind of just looking at our questions here in our notes a little bit. It's something that we really haven't touched on yet. Is about energy having personality, right? Which we kind of have. And do all beings in all universes or planets have ego, akash, emotions, personality, etc., etc.? Since we kind of got into the being thing.
I think anything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we are in a constant, ever expanding multiverse, and I think that once you start to see the patterns, you're like, I see you, I see you. Mm-hmm. And I think that they must have some version of it, but I think that every time creator, source, God, whatever you use, creates a new universe, every time that happens, refinements happen based on the experiences that come before. So I personally believe that how they all call us the human experiment, and Earth is an experiment. I think emotion is the piece of that is the experiment. Because I think you'd be hard pressed to find an intuitive worth their salt that will tell you, oh, I talked to Johnny, my Pleiadian, and man, he was so pissed at me, because they don't have emotion. Or on the flip side, Johnny the Pleiadian was anything other than love embodied. I just think that we are a grand experiment, and I think there'll be another one behind us.
I think about the explosion in Norse paganism that has happened over the last few years, and how people have gotten away from Christianity or Christian-based religions, and how they are starting to look at more of a polytheistic way of understanding creation. And to me, the Norse gods, deities, or those archetypal energy forces are more approachable, right? Like they have flaws. If you go to the mythology, you'll see that there have been instances of ego. There have been instances of just wanting to start some shit. Looking at you, Loki. There have been, things that they have mistakes that they have made, and it has become more approachable for the people who explore those faiths or that faith. And you can start to look into the mirror and say, I am worthy of X, Y, or Z, instead of, oh my God, there's a deity that is going to smite me for stepping out of line. I look at it
Jesus,
from...
It wasn't even his fault. It was the white man who took Jesus's mistakes out of that book, right?
Exactly.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was pretty much...
They're all like, we're worthy of all of them, and they are all worthy of us. I mean, that's the bottom line, is we're just an extension of them. And I think sometimes I know they play through us. I know they experience the world through us. So I think we need to live hard and live authentically. And because if we are pretending to be someone else, we don't fulfill our mission. That's why we have all these traumas that hang around. Parents stuffing feelings and yuck.
So when you invoke your goddess and god and deities, put a little of yourself into it, and recognize your power and embodiment within that as well, and see how that fits. Because I think the bottom line of this whole conversation too is, like you said, we're worthy, we're empowered, we're part of it. It's co-creating. It's all of this. It's versus waiting with a hand out going, please give me, XYZ.
Right. Moving beyond survival mode. We're moving beyond survival mode, both physically and energetically. Like, we don't have to have that sort of handout. Now we can move on.
Right.
Which is probably root chakra, is that survival, right? And now we're moving up into solar plexus and moving into that chaos. It's all reflected back, but you just have to be aware of the patterns and watch those. It's fun. Okay.
Well, I
Ladies,
think that pretty much covered
Great.
what we had in our notes. Any final thoughts before we end the episode?
I just really, really want, like, my biggest takeaway from this today was that I really wanted people to understand how subtle energy is and how it's in your life every day. And every single one of us are light workers living both lives, doing, like, the mundane is the spiritual work. It is how you are doing the thing that you are doing that is important. And then that doesn't have to be, you don't have to go anywhere or perform a ritual to receive your right or any. It's not that paradigm anymore. So I would just want people to hear of all of that. You're worthy and it's all around you. So all you have to do is reach out.
Let Odin walk right through that front door and do dishes with you. You know?
Clean the cobwebs out, Odie. All right, so we have, you're gonna have to remind me again because I don't have it memorized yet, but the Quantum Coalescence has a Facebook page. Quantum Coalescence has an Instagram. Quantum Coalescence has a LinkedIn. So we're gonna have our IT department link the codes to the bottom of this. And so if you want to reach out, I will say that we are hopeful. We're hopeful that we're going to move into conversations with guests because we are humans and we think in stories. And I think that that's important. It's important to bring forward people's expansion stories. I think we get a lot from it. So if you are interested in possibly being a guest on our show, we would love to hear from you and we'll go from there. But first we're going to kind of dabble a little bit, see what our flow is, and then we'll go from there. We know we're clear on that. We are grateful that you would spend any amount of time with us and share your day and share your energy and share your time. And we just hope that everything that we say, falls on an open heart, an open mind, and that you take something away that made your day. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.